It was the kind of revelation no one expected, the kind of words that can flip an entire narrative upside down. Sam Heughan, the Scottish heartthrob beloved by millions for his role in Outlander, had always been the master of mystery. He was polite, reserved, and careful, a man who let his performances speak louder than his personal life. But during a recent appearance, he shattered years of silence with a single line that stunned fans and shook Hollywood to its core. "I loved her from first sight." The "her" he referred to? Dakota Johnson. And with those words, Sam set the internet ablaze. Sam Heughan has long been one of Hollywood's most eligible bachelors, but also one of its most private. For years, his fans speculated endlessly about who he was dating, who he might secretly love, and why he never spoke openly about romance. He was linked to co-star Katrina Balfe, rumored to have flings with models, whispered about in Hollywood circles, but never confirmed a thing. So when Sam decided to step forward with a confession so direct, so raw, it was more than surprising, it was seismic. For the first time, he wasn't dodging or deflecting. He was speaking from the heart. And the name he chose to link himself with wasn't just any actress. It was Dakota Johnson, one of the most talked about women in Hollywood. According to Sam, the first moment he laid eyes on Dakota was unforgettable. Insiders say he described it with a mix of wonder and vulnerability. "She walked into the room, and I just knew. I don't know how else to explain it. It was immediate, overwhelming. I loved her from first sight." Those words instantly transformed Sam's carefully guarded image. Suddenly, he wasn't just the brooding Highland warrior adored on screen. He was a man consumed by love, unafraid to admit it. It was the kind of declaration that Hollywood rarely sees anymore, one that felt pulled from the script of a sweeping romance film. For Dakota, the timing couldn't have been more dramatic. She had long been associated with Chris Martin, Coldplay's frontman, in an on-again, off-again relationship spanning years. Their romance had been quiet, understated, and surprisingly private for two people constantly pursued by cameras. But Sam's confession threw her into the spotlight in an entirely different way. Now, she wasn't just Chris Martin's partner. She was the woman Sam Heughan claimed to have loved at first sight. Hollywood loves a triangle, and this was the perfect one. The sensitive musician, the Scottish leading man, and the enigmatic actress caught in the middle. The moment the confession went public, social media erupted. Fans flooded Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok with their shock and excitement. "Sam said what? I can't believe it. He loved her from first sight? This is the plot twist we didn't see coming. Poor Chris Martin. How's he supposed to compete with Jamie Fraser himself?" Memes exploded across platforms. Chris Martin crying at his piano contrasted with Sam Heughan declaring love. Dakota's knowing smirk turned into the face of Hollywood's newest Queen of Hearts. Hashtags like #Sam loves Dakota, #First Sight Confession, and #Chris vs Sam trended worldwide. The entertainment press wasted no time turning Sam's heartfelt confession into its latest feeding frenzy. Some outlets praised him for being vulnerable, for daring to speak about love in an industry where image often trumps authenticity. Others accused him of recklessness, wondering why he would stir up scandal when Dakota's ties to Chris Martin were still so strong. Headlines screamed, "Sam Heughan confesses love for Dakota Johnson, a new Hollywood romance?" Chris Martin humiliated by Sam's public declaration. Dakota Johnson, between two lovers. Talk shows debated endlessly. Was Sam confessing to a current relationship, or simply admitting to an unrequited crush? Was Dakota secretly reciprocating, or blindsided by his words? For Chris Martin, the confession landed like a thunderclap. Though he hadn't spoken publicly, sources claimed he was crushed and embarrassed by Sam's statement. To see his partner's name tied so openly to another man, especially in such a romantic, dramatic way, was devastating. For Dakota, the silence was deafening. She hadn't responded, yet her every move was scrutinized. Was her smile at a recent red carpet event a secret message? Did her decision not to attend Chris's concert mean something more? Hollywood's obsession with reading between the lines only made the drama grow. And for Sam, the fallout was two-sided. On one hand, fans praised him as a romantic hero, unafraid of love. On the other, critics slammed him as a reckless man who had dragged Dakota and Chris into a mess they never asked for. By the end of the week, one thing was clear. Sam Heughan's confession had become more than just a soundbite. It was a scandal, a love story, and a public spectacle rolled into one. He had spoken the words, "I loved her from first sight." And now the world was waiting for Dakota Johnson to answer. Would she embrace his confession? Would she defend Chris Martin? Or would she remain silent, letting the storm rage on around her? The stage was set, the players were in place, and Hollywood was holding its breath. Sam Heughan's words, "I loved her from first sight," echoed across Hollywood like a thunderclap. They were replayed on every talk show, dissected in countless podcasts, and quoted endlessly across social media. But as the dust settled, attention turned to the one person who had not yet spoken, Dakota Johnson. Would she embrace Sam's confession? Would she stand by Chris Martin? Or would she, as she so often had before, retreat into enigmatic silence? For Dakota, the pressure was suffocating. Everywhere she went, cameras followed. Reporters shouted questions as she left movie sets. "Dakota, do you love Sam too? Is Chris heartbroken?" Friends described her as shaken but composed. She had always managed her private life with a careful balance, letting just enough slip to keep the public intrigued, but never so much that her control was lost. Now, Sam's declaration had ripped that control from her hands. Her first public appearance after the confession was at a film premiere. As she walked the red carpet, flashbulbs lit up like fireworks, and every micro-expression on her face was magnified and debated. She smiled briefly, waved politely, but she said nothing. And her silence only made the frenzy worse. Meanwhile, Chris Martin's heartbreak became the scandal's emotional centerpiece. During a Coldplay concert in Paris, fans captured footage of him once again fighting back tears during "Fix You." The video went viral overnight, accompanied by captions like, "Chris Martin sings through the pain." Insiders claimed Chris felt humiliated by Sam's words. It wasn't just a confession, one source said. It was a public declaration that made Chris look like the man who'd already lost. Chris did not speak publicly, but his music told the story. Fans pored over his setlists, his emotional delivery, and his cryptic comments between songs, interpreting them as veiled references to his heartbreak. For many, Chris Martin had become the tragic figure in a love story gone horribly wrong. While Sam's romantic confession endeared him to many fans, it also painted a target on his back. Supporters hailed him as the ultimate romantic hero, comparing him to Jamie Fraser, his character in Outlander, who declared love boldly and without fear. But critics were ruthless. Some accused him of overstepping, of humiliating Dakota by speaking so openly without her consent. Others saw it as a calculated move to elevate his name in Hollywood gossip circles. Tabloids fanned the flames with contradictory narratives. Sam Heughan, Hollywood's last gentleman, versus Sam the homewrecker. In the end, Sam had become both, beloved by some, condemned by others, trapped in a narrative that had spiraled beyond his control. As the scandal grew, the storyline became clear. Chris Martin as the heartbroken musician, Dakota Johnson as the woman forced to choose, and Sam Heughan as the bold outsider who had spoken his truth. Talk shows hosted debates about whether Dakota should leave Chris for Sam. Social media erupted with hashtags. Hashtag Team Chris, hashtag Team Sam, and even hashtag Dakota Choose. Fans wrote essays, recorded videos, and created edits pitting one man against the other. It wasn't just gossip anymore, it was cultural theater, a modern love triangle performed for the world. After weeks of silence, Dakota finally broke. In an interview promoting her new film, a journalist asked directly, "What do you think of Sam Heughan's confession?" Dakota paused, her signature smirk flickering across her face. Then she said carefully, "I have a lot of respect for Sam. He's incredibly kind, incredibly talented, and what he said was very sweet. But I also think love is complicated, and it's not something you can sum up in a single sentence. It was classic Dakota, measured, enigmatic, offering just enough without truly answering. Her words were gracious towards Sam, but they didn't abandon Chris either. She kept the mystery alive, refusing to give the tabloids the definitive headline they craved. What emerged from the scandal was less a love story and more a tragedy of perception. Sam's confession had been heartfelt, but its consequences were devastating. Chris Martin was left humiliated, his heartbreak broadcast to the world. Dakota was cast as a woman torn between two men, whether she wanted to be or not. And Sam himself became the symbol of both romance and recklessness. The tearful truth was this: there may never have been a true love affair between Sam and Dakota. Perhaps it was admiration, perhaps it was a fleeting spark. But in Hollywood, perception is everything, and perception turned it into one of the most dramatic love triangles of the decade. Months later, the frenzy began to fade, but its legacy lingered. Sam Heughan's reputation as a romantic was forever cemented. Chris Martin's image as the heartbroken artist deepened, and Dakota Johnson's mystique only grew stronger. The confession, 7 simple words, "I loved her from first sight," had sparked a scandal that captivated millions. It was proof of the fragile line between love and chaos, truth and rumor, reality and Hollywood fantasy. And it left the world wondering, what happens when private feelings become public spectacle?